If you are crazy, must say clap your hands.
Domino Thinking presents Natural Born Speakers with your host, Allison Donaghy. If you are born to talk and want to know how to build your career around it, then Natural Born Speakers is the show for you. Now grab your seat because this is the place to be. Now here is your host, Allison.
Hi, and thanks for joining us today. Today's show is a little bit unusual compared to our other shows because today's going to be a documentary of my experience with Marc Stroiber creating my own ultimate speech. I guess it was in January I heard Marc speaking at an event, and I just thought he was an amazing speaker. So when he agreed to be a guest on my show back in May, I thought this is a terrific opportunity for me to pick his brains about what goes into a great speech. After we spoke for our hour and had our interview, he suggested that maybe we work together on my ultimate speech, and I was really excited to be able to do this because if I could get a speech anywhere close to Marc's, I thought this would be a really terrific time to do it and to learn from somebody who is really so talented. And I had done speeches in the past, quite a few speeches, but nothing to this caliber. And I had a 30-minute keynote coming up, and I wanted to have this new system in place. And then what I did was we recorded all of the sessions that I did with Marc. And what I'm going to show you after this point is what that sounded like so that you get a sense of what Marc does, excuse me, when he is creating these speeches with people. It's not just about him telling us what we want to say. It's a real collaborative effort. And these next few clips in the next half hour or so will be an indication of what it would be like to work with Marc, which, as I may have already said, I highly recommend. So this is the first phase. This is how the first conversation happened, and this is how he broke it down.
This generally takes about 4 calls.
Okay.
The first call, what we do is get to the bottom of what you want to talk about, and we try to put a structure to it.
Okay.
And the second call, we start to put meat on the bones. We actually start to say, okay, what are the stories that go into this? What are the points that you want to make? And it's a bit like a Christmas tree. You know, once we have the structure, the tree underneath, then we can start to decorate it. Excellent. And that's the second call. In the third call, we get together and we start to edit. You start to read what I've written, and hopefully what I've done is captured it in your words.
Okay.
And then stuff will stick in your throat, and you'll just go, I can't say, it doesn't sound right. And what we're going to start to do is peel back all the stuff that doesn't work, and we're going to find as we've gotten more complicated, then we're going to get simpler again. Okay. We're going to have less notes. We're going to start putting a slideshow to this, which is just going to be words on a slide. You know, man in forest, chimpanzee, knife and fork, whatever. And what we want to do by the fourth call is get it to the point where there is no more manuscript, there is no more words, or very few, and all you're doing is looking at pictures, and now you've got this connection. Aha, I know what the words were, and now I see this picture, and it triggers the words.
Okay.
If it works, and it has every time, what will happen is we're going to go long, and you're going to have a manuscript, which you can use as a leave behind for people.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you're going to have is the actual speech, which is going to be a series of very short bullets. You know, talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. And visuals to remind you. If the way it'll come out is less like Broadway and more like Hollywood. On Broadway, you have to remember the entire 90-minute play in order to make it work.
Okay.
In Hollywood, you have to remember one scene.
Mm-hmm.
Which is way easier. And, which makes you wonder why they get paid so much. But it's way easier. And what it means is that we're going to create a series of slides that work like breadcrumbs. And you'll see a slide, and you'll go, aha, I know what the script is for that. And you'll recite your 30 seconds or 60 seconds.
Right.
And you'll hit the slide, and the next one will prompt you and prompt you and prompt you. So that's how it'll work. And that's what makes rehearsing such a pleasure, because essentially you're just talking. You're not trying to memorize a script like a Broadway actor.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
How hard could it be?
Exactly.
It is an easy concept, but people do manage to make it hard for themselves, you know?
We are human beings.
Yeah, well, the biggest problem that we find with speeches is that folks they'll treat the slide as a lily pad, but what they'll do, they'll write their script onto the wall.
Right.
And so they'll just read it out, which basically takes the whole reason for them being there out of the equation.
Right.
You could just do a slideshow and send the speaker home.
Yeah, pretty much. Those drive me nuts.
Yeah, and there's a curious dynamic in a speech. You know, there's the speaker, there's the audience, there's the room, there's the lights, there's the sound system, and they all mush together, and they create something that's highly unpredictable.
Right.
So that is unlike, you know, a TV commercial where everything is controlled, or a radio commercial. When you're doing a commercial live on stage like that for yourself, or trying to get a point across, anything can happen. So we have a whole bunch of fail safes put in place so that you build the right effect and come off like a rock star.
I like it.
Okay, let's do it.
So now that we had this conversation about what was going to happen and how the flow of our conversations were going to go, it was so much easier for me to just start then having conversations with Marc about what was happening, what I wanted my speech to sound like, what I wanted some of the content was. And so we just did it in the famous words of Marc. He likes just doing it. And so we carried on. And then we talked about things like, what are good intentions? And because that's an important part of what I question when I speak. And the things, again, that I wanted to talk about. And I would hear Marc typing away in the background, and then he'd ask more questions to get into my headspace. And then he just figured out a plan. It was magic.
Does that seem that does?
Yeah, it totally makes sense, that finding your tribe,
Mm-hmm.
and you think that you found your home, but in actuality, you've just found no reason to question anything that you do, and you've just given yourself permission to stay exactly where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that people need to be something other than who they are. I just think we have to think about it. Like, I don't know if I talked to you about the whole pro-life, pro-choice thing that I talk to people about.
No, I'm dying to hear that. So what happens when we have good intentions and things turn out wrong?
Well, we tend to blame it, I think, on an external source. Well, it's not our fault. Or we ignore it altogether and just pretend that we had no part of it. But I think sometimes we are so far removed from the outcome. I'm
just going to go right on ahead and tell you exactly what you're going to be talking about.
And that's what Marc did. Marc told me what my speech was going to be about. But the beautiful part is that he told me what my speech was going to be about based on everything that I had told him. And it had it maintained my own flavor of what I wanted to say, and it included my stories. And I love how well Marc listened to the essence of everything that I was saying. And after that, we then got talking about how to construct the speech and different methods. And one of the ones he talked about was the hero's journey. So here's Marc talking about the hero's journey.
It starts off with, you minding your own business and knowing that there's something out there that might make life a whole lot better, but it's kind of hard to imagine. It's a lot easier just staying status quo.
Right.
And then something shakes you up. Was there anything that shook you up and made you jump into it?
On one of the days that Marc and I were scheduled to have a phone call, I was in such a terrible headspace. Because this was a really different learning process for me. I had created my own speeches before, but because they'd all sort of come with inside my head, there was a organic construction to them. It wasn't this breakdown, build up process that I was doing with Marc. And we had one phone call, and I was good. I was all pumped. I was thinking, this is going to be great. And then for the next day and a half, I had these horrible brain gremlins saying to me, who do you think you are to do this? You can't remember 30 minutes of speech. And the amazing part was that Marc and I were actually able to talk about it. I didn't have to pretend I had it all under control and that I knew exactly what I was doing. And we had this really good, honest conversation about how we really hard on ourselves and how we all had this shared experience of not feeling like we're the smartest person in the room. So this is what it sounded like. It's so interesting how our brains just work against us.
Mm-hmm.
It seems so counterintuitive. Our brains should just be like, yeah, this is good, go with it. But
yeah, no, there's a lot of frame lock. There's a lot of stuff going on where you just don't think that you're smart enough. Or I spent my entire life like that, where you just think that you're the dumbest guy in the room.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And then, of course, once you start thinking about it, the universe gives you all of these examples of how you're just not as smart as you once thought you were. So once Marc and I got over our discussion about how we're not necessarily as smart as we thought we were, or in fact, maybe that just makes us smarter, hard to say, we got to talking about this speech again. And he had written the speech and based on everything that we had talked about previously. And then I was just able to read the speech. And then that's what I did. I went through everything that he had written based on the things that we had talked about. And I read out the speech. And it was a really interesting process to hear my own words coming back to me that I had relayed to him earlier. And this is this is exactly what it sounded like.
What's going to happen is you just start reading the sucker out. Now, by the way, I timed it out. I didn't time it out, but if you read anything like me and you embellish, 5.5 pages should take you 30 minutes. Usually my talks go 40 minutes, and those are 7 pages.
Right.
So...
So do you want me to just do like beginning to end, or do you want me to stop if there's anything?
Yeah,
or?
Well, you know what? Just whatever works for you. I think the main thing is that after this, we then have sort of the core of a speech, and then what I can do, I can rewrite it again, and we can start to put in little spots where I think.
So then, after I talked through my speech, then Marc gave me some pointers and about how I can improve it, how I can make the speech even more mine, and get rid of any language that maybe he had used that I might not have used. And this was an example of how easy it was to work with Marc, because he is so supportive. And even when there is comments about how I can improve, it's all done without judgment, and it really helps me become a better speaker and to present in my own personal style a lot better. And I felt completely empowered by the end of this, which was totally different than all those gremlins that were nattering away in my head from earlier in the week. So here's what he had to say about it.
Your job before Friday is going to be practice with this.
Okay.
And when you practice, just when you see long sentences that don't make any sense, don't say them.
Okay.
And just instead of saying them, start to say stuff that feels good to you. Mm-hmm. Then what's going to happen is this is going to become yours. Imagine this as sort of a suggestion for how you might do a painting as opposed to a paint by numbers. You're not following any directions. These are just jumping off points.
Okay.
So you read it a few times and you say it out loud to the mirror. Mm-hmm. And whenever a sentence feels stupid, don't say it. Just say, what would I say?
Okay.
And try that. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, I'll do it today, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. I'm going to send you over a PowerPoint. If you can read along with that, if instead of reading all these words, you just go click, oh yeah, bus. Click, oh yeah, due process. Click, oh yeah, I'm the annoying girl. Click, stuff like that. So that then you can just fill in the blanks and hop from slide to side and just fill in the blanks.
Okay.
Because you're good at this. You're very good at this. This is going to be a nice talk. I don't think you need that much work. So let's just get you rehearsing with the right stuff so it turns into your story, so you can be hungover and jet lagged, and just the slides can go away and you can just talk it, and you'll be the best talk at a conference.
Okay. Points.
I think ditching the notes altogether is a very good idea. Mm-hmm. And make it so that the slides, even if we put 60 slides in for a 30-minute show, make it so that the slides become your breadcrumbs, that they just lead you from one point to the next. And then you'll just fall back into Alice in sort of natural talk mode.
Right.
which is you've got a really good style. Really, really nice style. It's super easy, super fun to listen to. You're actually making life very easy for me here. This is you've got a way of talking. You've got nice big ideas. A lot of people tend to go to bullet point and 50 different things. A lot of people think that the way to appear smart is to give lots of details, particularly engineers and healthcare professionals. And you just go, no, please, they don't. If you do that, you're going to kill them. They're going to hate you. They're not going to listen to a word you say. But it's really hard to get people off that. You have no problem telling stories. You're real good at that. And your job is to take that script, print it out, start to read it through, and as you read it, just go, this is bullshit. I can't say that. But then instead of just leaving it, say, how would I say this?
Okay.
And then just start to get that. And I can guarantee you the way you read and speak, within a few reads, you're going to sort of start to see the pattern coming out and start to be able to fill in the blanks in your own voice. And it's going to be yours.
Okay.
Yeah?
Sounds good.
Awesome. You're printing now.
I am. Oh, yeah. I'm going to get to it. And I was really excited, and I did totally get started with it. And I thought about it in my car when I was driving. I sat at my desk when I got up in the morning, and I was brushing my teeth. I was looking in the mirror, and I was trying to figure out different ways and better ways of saying things. So I was really, really excited about this process. And then next time we met, we got to talk about what didn't feel right and why it didn't feel right. And part of this discussion came from what Marc was thinking at the time when he originally wrote things, and how what I said impacted his interpretation, and then B, how it didn't fit or did fit. And because sometimes I would say something, because I often don't remember what I say, and he would put something in for that, and I'd be like, whoa, I said that? And he'd be like, yes, you said that. And we got to talk about the backstory behind it and where that actual thought came from. Ultimately, we removed a whole section about talking about restaurants, and you'll hear that and how we did that in this clip here. Does that seem like completely out of place? Like it feels to me like we've just totally jumped gears for that.
Well, the whole thought is that when you do critical thinking and you're good at it, people come out of the woodwork asking you your critical thinking thoughts, and that maybe it needs to be tweaked, maybe it needs to be moved around or massaged a bit, or maybe there's better examples. I'll be sitting here. I'll just make notes and stuff like that while you're talking. But do you want to go through it?
We totally can.
Okay. Did you feel like the word slides help? Did you move towards them and away from the manuscript?
What I'm finding hard is that I can't see what the next slide is going to be.
Yeah.
On my screen, I can only see the 3 at a time. So then it was like, stop and shift. So I imagine that will get better once I understand the flow of it and once I learn all the different
words?
Screens. Yeah.
I subscribe to the breadcrumb slideshow philosophy. Because I do when I'm doing a lot of talks or I don't have time to rehearse a talk properly, I lean on my slideshow as almost like in a cartoon or a comic book where you see the frames and you can go from frame to frame. I'll put in as many as 60 slides for a 30-minute talk.
This next clip here is talking about the slides. So we'd introduced the slides and me getting used to using them because I hadn't done many slides before, and I certainly hadn't done them like this. And we talked a lot about the bad habits that people pick up when they're using slides and the things to avoid. So check this out. 2 things are going on is that, one, I've got all of my slides up here, so I can see them when I'm doing it. But when I'm actually then giving the speech, I won't know which one's coming up next. Right? And so then there's going to be that learning the sequence, unless there's a trick.
There's a trick.
Okay.
What's the second problem? That's
I can't remember.
There's 2 problems. The first problem is that, and the second problem is the first problem, except worse.
Yes.
What you do, you take time. Whenever you change slides, don't be afraid. There's an old trick I learned from a great pitch coach. He said, don't be afraid to pause. When you run out of stuff to say, you think you're kind of at the near end of where that slide is going to take you. It's almost out of gas. You hit the change button, and then you take a look at the slide. You're standing beside it because you've got the screen right here, right beside you, and probably on this side if you're at a big show. They're on both sides. They might even be behind you. You don't want to be standing in front of the screen, because then people are looking at the slide through you. So what you want to do is wander off to one side.
Right.
There's the slideshow in the middle. You're standing off to a side. That's why they always have the podiums off to the side. So I never do that. I never stand at a podium. I always freewheel around. I always walk from stage left to stage right, but I'm always at one side of the stage. And every time I change the slide, I just take 1 second to stop and shut up and take a look back. And nobody says, "Oh my God, he doesn't know what he's talking about." They all go, that there's a pause. You want in a good speech to go fast and slow, up and down. Keep people always guessing where you're going to go. Are you going to get real excited? Are you going to slow down? Are you going to get breathy? Are you going to yell? Are you going to,
Right.
And what it does, it lets you catch your breath, reframe yourself, and go again.
Okay.
So
then what happens if you go past your slide talking?
That's a great question. Do it all the time. What happens is you talk and you get so excited, you just go, and then you click and you go, "Oh shit, there's the slide that I should have been on."
Oh, okay. So you just say it.
Nope.
Oh.
That's the first mistake everybody makes.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were just telling me what you say. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody goes, "Oh shit, I just skipped that one." Ha 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 ha. Skip right past it. Pretend it didn't even exist. Everybody will go, "What was that?" Oh.
Right.
They'll think about it for a split second. The worst thing you can do in a speech is draw attention to a screw up. A lot of people will walk up on stage. Absolutely the worst thing you can do is they walk up on a stage and go, "Wow, I just wrote this last night."
Oh my God, that pisses me off. I want to get up and leave the room every time I hear that.
I know. They do it all the time. Worst thing you can do is admit screw-ups.
Okay.
You go right past them and pretend they didn't even happen. Whether you get up on stage, you forget, or you're saying something and you forget. Whenever I told you this before, whenever I forget, and I constantly do, I stand there, I grab my chin like this, and I look at the audience like I'm about to set up for a joke. And it works because the dead air makes everybody lean forward. If I used to do this, can you believe it? I totally forgot where I was going. People think you're a moron. You do the slides and you go, "Oh shit, I was going to do that one." People think you're a moron. So have absolutely no fear about that stuff. What we're trying to do is get the timing so that you talk and you run out of gas, and that's where the next slide rescues you. So about every 30 seconds you get rescued.
Okay.
Until you get so good, and then you just go click, 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 and you look like a genius.
All right.
Yeah.
I look like a genius. That's good.
Okay, so let's try it. Just tell me when you're clicking, and I'm going to click along with you.
So then I did the speech with the slides. And then after the slide was done, or at least my rehearsal was so the slides were done, Marc then had comments about and feedback about how that all went on his end of it.
I got a ton of notes here. Actually, not that many. I think one of the first things that hit me, I think you've got terrific stories. You've got a really good flow. You've got a very easy way of speaking. There were a number of occasions where you haven't quite grown into your ideas yet. So, for example, you'll go, this thing taught me 3 things. And you're going, what thing taught you 3 what?
Right.
And I know it's how you speak, but if you have to...
It's not how people listen.
Yeah, it's not how people listen. They'll think that you didn't think it through. This specific this moment in time taught me 3 very, very important lessons that stuck with me forever. There's still a bit of uptalk in there. You still got a bit of valley girl in there.
Okay.
But that's just practice.
Right.
Now imagine, we've only had 3 phone calls. We've gone from kind of the germ of an idea to something that you're saying almost without looking at stuff. And now we're just tuning it, and now we're going to put actual slides with pretty visuals against it to practice against, and we'll keep tuning and tuning and tuning. We'll do it again on Wednesday and maybe on Friday. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Do you feel like you're making progress?
I do. And this is amazing. This is a really cool process.
You like it?
I do.
Does help you come down to what you want to do, right?
And being able to sort of see it like this, it's a great way to jump from point to point and try to stay on course, and then I just have to get me from one point to the next. So I really like how quickly I've been able to do a 30-minute speech. Mm-hmm. And even though there's areas to work on and everything else, if I had to do it this way tomorrow, it would be better than the system I was using by far.
Mm-hmm. Good. Mm-hmm. Good. Mm-hmm. All right, let's keep hammering it then. Yeah. And then now it's just down to practice and tweak. So I'm going to have for Wednesday, I'll have a slideshow for you.
Okay.
Yeah?
Exciting.
I'll talk to you in a bit.
All right, have a great day.
See ya.
And that was how that phone call ended. And our next phone call, again, we did a rehearsal. I used the slides. I had no notes. It was amazing how quickly this was progressing. And then Marc had some useful tips about how I could stay calm on stage, how we can use pauses and take our time to really improve our speech. And this is what he has to say about that.
When you start the speech, the best thing I found is you get up on stage and everybody claps. Don't say anything. Don't say anything for a while. Just start walking around the stage a little bit. Make it look like you're sizing up the audience. Mm-hmm. And it will make everybody go, whoa, what's going on here?
Right.
And it'll give you time to calm down.
Okay.
When you start talking, it's going to start taking on a rhythm of its own if you let it. Mm-hmm. If you practice enough, you'll kick into autopilot. I promise you, you will kick into autopilot. And you will just start talking and use the slides to guide you. Take your time. If the slides throw you off, slow down, click to the next slide. Don't say anything. Mm-hmm. Don't say, hold on, let me just find my slide. Don't say any of that. Just go click, click. Oh, wrong direction. Click, click. Don't say anything. But just calm down and let it take over. Okay. And if you've practiced enough, it will take over.
Okay.
You're doing great.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Good teacher.
You're very good at this. You can the improvement from one call to the next is tangible. Huge.
Good.
All right, my friend, keep practicing. Do it about once a day, and then we'll talk to you next week.
Now that you've heard my experience with creating my ultimate speech, I'm happy to have Gary Birch on the show talking about what his experience with Marc and creating his own ultimate speech was. So thank you, Gary, for joining us.
Good morning, Alison. It's good to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for taking time out. As you know, we're doing a documentary on Marc's Your Ultimate Speech and our experiences with it. And I understand that he went through this whole process with you. Can you tell us about it? Like, why did you get in touch with Marc in the first place?
Well, for sure. What happened is my board of directors and actually a committee of the board had been talking about, me taking the next step in terms of trying to get my message out there. And then the idea of a TED Talk came up. So we started to pursue looking for an opportunity to do a TED Talk. And then we found out that there was one coming up here in Vancouver it happened in March 2016, and it wasn't the full-fledged TED Talks. It was a TEDx, which is an independently organized event by the British Columbia Institute of Technology, and so I applied and got in, and then I went, oh, okay, now I'm in. Now I got to come up with a great talk. And yeah. So my board chair, had come across Marc's name somehow, and I apologize. I don't know how Drew came up upon it, but he just forwarded me Marc's name and said, hey, it might be worth connecting with this guy. So indeed, Marc and I spoke, and Marc was enthusiastic from the moment I spoke with him, and I just got a feeling that we could work well together right off the bat. I sent him a first draft of what I was kind of thinking of doing, and we agreed to take it from there.
Brilliant. So you had already had a speech that you were starting with.
Yeah, it was very, very drafty, and I knew it wasn't ready for prime time. Yeah.
Okay.
And, I'm an academic. I've done lots of talks in front of, small to medium to large crowds, but doing a TED Talk, being able to just be engaging and really getting a message across, that's a very different kind of task to pull off well.
Mm-hmm. And there's definitely more of a vulnerability that goes along with giving a speech like that, isn't there? Did you find that? Am I assuming?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, you're up there, you're all alone, and people are expecting to be entertained. You know? So,
right.
Yeah.
And I want to say your TEDx was a great speech. I was certainly entertained by it. And people, if they want to hear it, I will also include it as part of my blog, but they can go to TEDx Vancouver. Is it Stanley Park or Vancouver?
Actually, that was a BCIT TEDx.
Okay, so TEDx BCIT, and they would be able to look you up there. It's Gary Birch. Oh, let's just turn that off. Gary Birch they can search your name for that.
Yeah, if you just search Birch and TEDx, it should come up. Yep.
Terrific. So how did your speech change working with Marc?
Okay, well, I'll briefly take you through the process because I think that was one of it's the process that Marc took me through that really is the key to what I really liked about working with Marc. So we, once we agreed that we wanted to work together, which happened very quickly actually, we set up a series of Skype meetings, and the first 2, possibly 3, it was more of an interview. He was trying to find out more about what I wanted to do, what I was trying to get across, and he was taking notes, and I told him that, I thought I wanted to tell my story a little bit, but I didn't want it to be all about my story. I wanted to be able to say something about persons with disabilities and help people, or maybe inspire people, I should say, to think a little bit differently about how they think about people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. And, even though he didn't really have any expertise in that area, he was very good at listening to me and then bringing his own fresh perspective on how to package that in a way that would be punchy and interesting. And so he came back with a first draft, his first draft of my talk, and then it was just a series of rehearsing, seeing which parts of the talk seemed to be working, which pieces didn't, honing it down. He wanted to get it, I think the maximum that I was allowed was 20 minutes, and I think we were trying to get it down to around 14 to 12 minutes. I think I brought it in around 14 minutes by the end. At times I was well over 20 minutes, but that was part of the process, to kind of figure out what was working, what wasn't. Mm-hmm. And after I rehearsed it in front of him, he encouraged me to rehearse it in front of other people, that kind of thing. And that was key. So there were like the 2 components, helping me come up with the content and bringing a fresh perspective to how I could get that content across in a really engaging way. And then just coaching me. And he didn't try to coach me to be a different kind of speaker than I am. He noticed sort of what my strengths were in being a speaker and kind of nurtured those. So he didn't try to turn me into a Steve Jobs, or anything like that. He, took the kind of style I had and made it work really well for me.
Brilliant. So how do you think that your speech improved having worked with Marc? Like, where would you have been without Marc, and where were you with Marc? Like, can you even articulate that, or have you thought about that?
I have thought about it. It's very hard to know. I think particularly the story or the content of my talk and the way it came across. I'm fairly confident that it would have been much different and not nearly as impactful if I hadn't worked with Marc. There's no question in my mind about that. If I'd had the content figured all out, perhaps, with a lot of rehearsing, it might have come off. But, I give a lot of the credit to Marc. I really do, and it's hard to sort of imagine what it would have been without him, but he was a huge value add, and it was well worth. And it was a lot of work, both on his part and my part. And I think, when I wasn't working with Marc, I was practicing it, over and over and over. And at one point through the process, I didn't imagine I could do 14 plus minutes worth of just talking and being engaging and not having notes in front of me. That seemed like an impossible task, but by the end, it was completely the way it happened. I had it completely memorized, internalized in such a way that I didn't feel like I was just memorizing, like regurgitating something I'd memorized, but I got so comfortable with it, I thought I was delivering a topic. Yeah. And, yeah, so it wouldn't have been nearly as impactful or as engaging if Marc had not been involved.
Right. So anybody listening who's thinking that they have a speech coming up and need to prepare for it, what would your comments about working with Marc be?
I highly recommend Marc because for the reasons I've already gone over, but he's very good at listening to you and helping you deliver what you want to deliver and really making that the best it can be. And yeah, it was just a great experience all the way around working with Marc. And yeah, my TED Talk has had some real impact, I believe, too. So it was well worth it working with Marc and well worth the time and effort I put into it.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to be doing more with your speaking?
Yes, I've had several invites to be keynote speakers at various fairly large conferences, and it's also got around and has it's played a role in getting me invited to some very important government-related opportunities for me that were very important in terms of the Neil Squire Society that I work for. Mm-hmm. And part of what got me on their radar was watching my TEDx. So yeah, it's had tremendous value.
That is so great to hear, because your message on that, and the title of your speech was, "Is Your Innovation Disabled?" Correct?
That's correct, yes. And Marc helped me come up with that as well.
It's a great title. I loved it. And I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into when I started watching it. And I think that's the beauty of how Marc creates some of these things, is he takes the listener on a journey about your story and how you want to tell it. And that is definitely the similar experience that I have. And I know when I watched your speech, it really stood out for me. You did talk at some point in there about, it was a drive-through and somebody working in the drive-through. And I thought, what a great perspective on how we undervalue certain things, and when we focus on it, how we can see the real value in it. And I thought that was a really well-woven story. Yeah,
and again, that's part of me just talking about the experiences and knowledge I had, and then Marc picking up, okay, well, that's cool. Let's talk about that. Yeah. So getting that outside perspective, and Marc being creative like he is, he's great at pulling those pieces together. Mm-hmm.
Well, that is so great. And I love that we had such a similar shared experience about how we had something, Marc helped make us more us, and then we're able to share it with people. So thank you so much for taking this time out. And I just want to, is there anything that we can just know about you that our listeners can hear about you so we can get a better sense? Because I know this has all been about Marc, which is great because this is what the show is about. But at the same token, you have a really great and powerful message. So do you just want to maybe sum that up in a sentence or two?
Wow. Well, I guess would just encourage people. I've spent my life of working passionately for an organization called the Neil Squire Society. Encourage people, if they're interested, to Google it. It's about working with people with disabilities, helping them to live better lives by utilizing technology and getting back into the workforce. So you can read up about us there. And you can find out about me there as well. And, if you got time to watch my TEDx, I hope you'll find it time well spent.
Yeah, well, it would be. I can attest to that for sure. Well, thank you so much, Gary. I really, really appreciate having you here.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Alison. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye now. And next, we have Donald Chu giving his breakdown of what his experience with Marc was like, because it was a little bit different than Gary's, and here it is. So thank you, Donald Chu, for taking time to meet with me today and talk about your experience with Marc's ultimate speech.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to be here. It's a pleasure to do that.
Oh, that's great to hear. So can you tell me a little bit of the backstory about how you started talking to Marc? Like, how did you meet him? How did that come about?
Right. So I've been doing business with a gentleman called Neil Belenki, and he is a trusted colleague of mine. And he has a network called the $2,000 Coffee Network, where he has different people in different expertise, mostly entrepreneurs, and who provide their services. And so Marc is part of the network, and as well, I believe, is also Neil's business partner.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was introduced to me back, I believe, this year in February. And at the time, I didn't know that I would require Marc's service because I didn't have a speech coming up.
Right.
So at the time, but every business, like what was, when he was introduced to me, it was told to me that every business, and I agree with this, every business requires a kind of a pitch, whether it be on your website or on your personal profile on LinkedIn or wherever it may be. You need to let people know what you do, right?
That is kind of important.
It is, yeah.
It is.
And how you're different and things like that. So Marc and I worked on that as kind of the pitch, elevator pitch, if you will, for my business.
And that's his company called, what does he call that? Is it Swiddata? Is that how you say it? So what do I do anyway?
I think so. Like how it was introduced to me was, this is the elevator pitch thing, and I was one of the first to try it out. So I had an amazing experience with Marc in that we worked on scheduling like a touch point a day, pretty much. And each of those touch points, starting with a phone call, we go through, what is my pitch? How is my business different? And so he would kind of regurgitate to me, or in a different way, paraphrase it to me. Is this how it's different? Is this it? Is this it? Right? And coming back eventually with presentation slides and cues with words of what to say in front of a camera, right?
Right.
So that's new and interesting to me. Yeah.
And I've heard so many great things about how he does that. Like, he just has such this great way of cutting to the core of the matter and simplifying it. It's definitely one of his gifts.
It is, definitely. And I, like, through working with him, I find him a natural in the sense that he makes me calm down, when I talk to, when I'm in the speech, or if, I'm doing the thing in front of the camera. There's natural tendency to, go faster because, maybe like you're a little bit nervous. And he kind of chunked it down to say, look, you should slow down your beginning and then slow down your ending, and also, and everything else will kind of fall into place.
Right. Well, and he is
really
yes, he's such a chill guy.
Yes.
You can't help but just get calm when you're around him. It's kind
of
a neat effect he has.
Yeah. So to continue on with the story, I worked with him back in February on the elevator pitch thing. And then it wasn't until June, like last month, when I was called into a speech. And it was an hour-long presentation where I was presenting to a number of peers on some of what we're up to kind of thing. And so, and it was interesting because I was given the notice to present last minute. And then I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to say. I even had the slides ready because I've done the speech before and, was tweaking to the right audience, right?
Right.
And so, but then, I thought about it, and this is 24 hours before the speech.
Nothing like good planning.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's always so last minute. And I was like, you know what? This would actually be a big opportunity for me to elevate my speech and to really deliver something here. So I thought of Marc because I worked with him and I had a great experience working with him in the past. And I'm like, I'm not sure if he'd be available. But then I thought to myself, you know what? What's there to lose if I just send him a quick email to see if he is available? If he is, he is. If he's not, I'll go with what I had planned on before anyway.
Well, and he is so accommodating.
He is, yes.
Yeah,
so
he really is.
Pleasantly surprised and and happy to find out that he is available. He had to change a few things, but he made himself available to working with me. So pretty much we signed him on, and we discussed kind of the scope of what we're going to work on. And I think it was called a presentation polish, and he gave me a good deal, by the way. And so and he was there. Like the moment he signed on, he was there. So we started with just talking about, okay, what is this, right? Or what am I talking about, and who am I talking to, and what's the key message I want to convey here, right? So I sent him the existing slides that I had, and kind of talked through what I wanted to convey. He came back with something totally, not entirely different, but a similar vein, but a different style of presentation, which I'm very happy about.
Right. Well, and he has that gift of being able to hear what we're saying, and then translating it to a way that's more, I don't know, listenable.
Yes,
is that a good word? I don't even know if it is a word.
I totally agree with that. Like it's more appealing for people to hear it, right? So I would normally have my way of saying it, and then Mark would tweak it and coach me on here's how I may want to say it, which is a lot of time is taking time and slowing it down and having that confidence, knowing that I know my stuff, but delivering it in a format that would wow the audience, right? So, and
do you feel like he still really captured your message and who you were?
Yes, definitely, I think so. Because throughout the process, we got to know each other. He asked a lot of questions about, okay, what would my style be, and then so he catered to that as well, and I really appreciated that. So my personality came through, as well as Mark's, more calming style that we talked about. Right. And I think it turned out really well, really well. Yeah, from the feedback that I've gathered from the presentation.
Yeah. So would you use him again?
Oh, definitely. And I would highly recommend him to many of my colleagues who are scheduled to speak, or have an important presentation coming up. I would highly recommend him to my colleagues for sure. Yeah.
And how do you think that working with him impacted the speech, like how you felt about the speech as you were giving it?
Working with him helps me to calm down and slow things down. And so I think for the message, it creates more of an impact to the audience.
Right.
So, and the storytelling format that he coached me on is very powerful as well, because people like to hear stories. People don't like to hear people just present as a blabbermouth. You have a loudspeaker and you're just saying things, right?
Right.
And the interesting thing was this: I showed up early as I would, as a speaker to the presentation. So I showed up quite half an hour or 45 minutes early, and so I sat through the previous speaker and all the things that Mark taught me kind of to avoid and not to do. The previous speaker was doing. So I'm like, I was thinking to myself, I probably would have done that.
I would have sounded like him.
I know. I would have sounded like that. Exactly. And I was so grateful that Mark was available and that he coached me through, the ways that I should be presenting. And that made a huge difference to the way of delivery and a big part of the storytelling message as well. So and it worked out really, really well. I got some really good feedback from it. So.
Oh, terrific. So maybe we should have a tagline for Mark's business saying, if you don't want to sound like the other bad speakers.
No, that's perfect. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've given the speech that I worked on with him to a couple of different groups, and by far exceeded their expectation.
Right. Oh,
and so with you only having a really short window and short exposure to what this speech ultimately looked like, how was that for you? Because, often when people are giving a speech, they spend a lot of time preparing and memorizing and learning. You had 24 hours, roughly, before you had to speak. And it wasn't even like you had that full 24 hours with the speech.
No, that's right. Yeah, it was all new. It was all new graphics. So we started with creating just like taglines, like short lines that would trigger me to remember whether it be a story or a point that I wanted to make. And because, as a speaker, in a general sense, what you want to talk about, and having that cue really helps me to kind of exacerbate that story that I wanted to tell, right? So all I had to do is just remember those stories, which is normally natural. Usually a speaker would have told that story before, or if it's a new story, like, Marc would put a picture in it, and that would trigger my memory to go, oh, okay, that's what I wanted to say. And so it allows me to focus on the audience and kind of eye contact, everything, engagement, and telling that story to the audience. And so I also found this as well, which is, I find the audience, I could tell who's listening and who's kind of really tired. And granted that my presentation was after lunch, and I still captured a good part of the audience. That was
you're good when you can do well then. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, I was a second speaker after lunch, so it was like I think it was 2 p.m. Speech, and so it was good because people are getting tired, kicking in after lunch, and having the pasta at lunch and things like that. So yeah, so it was good.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your experience with the Ultimate Speech.
Yeah. Again, it's my pleasure. I'm very happy to give this, if you will, testimonial, share my experience working with Marc on this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, you did a wonderful job in explaining what your experience was, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks, Alice.
Right. Thanks, and have a great day.
Okay, you too. Take care.
Thanks. Bye. So there you have it. That was my experience creating my Ultimate Speech with Marc Stroiber. And you got to hear a little bit about how Gary did his and Donald did his. And I'd have to say all three of us are completely thrilled with the experience with working with Marc and how quickly we went from good to great. If you want to do that too, you can contact Marc at yourultimatespeech.com. So until next Thursday, speak up because you have something to say and I want to hear it.
Thanks for hanging out with Natural Born Speakers. But don't stop now. Contact Allison with questions to be a guest or hire her as a speaker. Go to dominothinking.com. See you same place and time next week.